Let me know when you can hear me, Shepard. Flop, 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 flop. Muchas gracias, Mr. Shepard. Swear, this dude, like the one time he can't make it physically in person from a 3.5-hour drive, he's been sitting in the chat waiting for like the last 20 minutes for us to go live. Dude is super dedicated. Just waiting on Ken. Yay, Mike can hear me. Good. So the audio is actually coming through. I was slightly nervous about that. Just wait a couple more minutes. Does anybody
So you guys do a webcast of your meetings as well?
Yep.
Oh, that's
yeah.
awesome.
Try really, really hard to do a webcast every month whenever we can. There's a lot of folks who are in the area but can't come out because they have stuff with their kids or the evenings or whatever. Like, as an organizer, I don't want them left out just because they can't physically be here.
Right.
So we've got some people who attend virtually every month or so, and then there's also a lot of folks from outside the area who will attend virtually. So we actually, when we started this up, it's because the nearest user groups were in Tennessee and Chicago, and neither of them were offering virtual stuff. So we're like, well, we'll just do it locally and see how that goes and make things work.
Yeah.
So it's worked out pretty well so far. We're not always successful. December is an all virtual organizing people getting together. The third week of December is not really easy. Very few people are going to be able to make it. So yeah, that's just easier to do a virtual one where you don't have to leave your house or whatever.
Yeah.
Did it look like Ken was coming? He was out there, presumably getting a drink. Yeah. Ken! It's just Shepard's waiting now. I want to keep him waiting for much longer. So we'll just go ahead and get started. Ken can catch up when he gets back. So topic tonight is JEA and you, or Sane Safety is Seriously Splendid, because I wrote a lot of this late at night and alliteration was fun. So before we go into JEA itself, we're going to talk a little bit about the way things are today, right? So let's talk about what life is like in operations. So when you're doing stuff in operations, there's a lot of RDP. This is probably still the primary way most people in most organizations with Windows environments are solving their operational issues. By and large, people either have admin access or they don't. Very, very rarely do you give somebody, like you can do it where you give them RDP without admin access, but you don't, right? I don't know anybody who does. Now the problem is, this last bullet is something that we see all too often. You don't need to hang your head if this is you, but in a lot of cases, there are more than a handful of people with domain admin access, and that is always uncomfortable for everybody. So let's talk about what happens when not operations need something from you, right? So the most common thing that happens is that they put in a ticket for you to go do something that is relatively trivial, but they just don't have the access to do, right? Because most of the time you'd give them admin access to go do that thing, and if they have it, and there's no end to the trouble they can cause, right? We script stuff out much less often than we'd like to pretend. We remote in through PowerShell and fix some things. So that's kind of what we're left with, is craters everywhere, right? the craters are essentially a whole bunch of technical debt. We will, I don't know if you guys are in the same boat I am, but there's a whole bunch of spaghetti code left behind me everywhere I've ever been where I solved a one-off problem with some sort of scripty thing so that somebody could just click a button, quote unquote, and get it done. That's not a super great practice. There's a lot of wasted time from your regular ops folks if you're not scripting stuff out. So like a good example of this is, hey, my web server needs to be restarted, right? Okay, well, I'm not going to give you access to go restart anything in the web farm, so I'll go kick it over for you. Well, that's not really a good use of time. And then if you do give them access, the biggest problem that you're left with is risk exposure, right? So if I make this developer an admin to the web farm, what's the impact of what he can do? It's usually a lot larger than just restarting a particular application, right? So that's kind of where we're at today throughout a lot of the Windows environment. So what do we do? If only we had a way to build endpoints we could selectively grant access to, which is where JEA maybe comes to our rescue, sort of. We'll find out. So just enough administration is defined as, quote, a security technology that helps organizations enforce information security by restricting IT administrative rights. JEA provides practical, role-based approach to set up and automate restrictions for IT personnel and reduces the risks associated with providing users full administrative rights. What? So you're going to safely and sanely give remote PowerShell access to some users for some tasks. It's kind of the point of JEA. So let's talk a little bit about some terms that we're going to need as we go forward through this. So this is actually going to be pretty demo-y heavy as we get further. But before we get there, a role is a definition of what can be done in a JEA endpoint. You define this in a data file ending with .psrc for PowerShell role configuration. Some of the metadata and definitions, some of the metadata is included in there, and then there's also definitions of what's visible to the user, functions, aliases, commandlets, providers, etc. By default, you have, I think, like a small set list of commands, like 8 commands, and there's no providers. So you can't see the file system. You can't see registry. You can't use variables. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's ripped out of the language that you just don't have access to by default. So if you want to add any of those things back in, you have to do it through the JEA endpoint role definitions. And so they call a session configuration what I'm going to call an endpoint for the rest of this discussion, because I think it's a better way to talk about it. So an endpoint is a definition of who can do what on a particular node, defined in a data file ending with .pssc for PowerShell session configuration. Some metadata is included, and there's definitions of roles, language mode, etc. So I know that that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so what we're going to do really quick is look at a very, very basic role definition. So here at the top, we have some metadata about the role. You've got a globally unique identifier for it, the author of the role, a description of what the role is for. So in this case, this is a limited read-only role enabling information gathering, but no changes to the system. Company name and copyright. So pretty standard. You've got your metadata. Then the really important part is these are the only commandlets outside of the default ones that you require for it to function, like out default, get command, etc., that will work at all in this session. So only the get, any commandlet that starts with get or function that starts with get will be visible. Now another thing to note, outside of the Microsoft core set of modules, no other modules will be available because we're not explicitly importing any. Right? We could go through and list what other modules that we want to be imported, but by default, whatever's available in quote core PowerShell end quote is what's going to be available here. And then again, only the get commands. So let's look a little bit at what an endpoint looks like. Let me back up real quick. Are there any questions about that right there? Where you have to explicitly set what commandlets and functions are visible.
This is the role configuration file?
Yep, this is a role configuration file, correct. So with an endpoint, very, very similar. This is going to look a little bit different. I actually have mine in a template format so that I can generate them with some minor differences. So that's why, for example, in the metadata here, you'll see I actually have new GUID .guid. That's because an earlier part of this lab, which I didn't have time to replace, was copying this module that I'm working on out to a node and then having it generate session configurations dynamically. Since it was, whenever you specify who has access, it has to be by computer name or domain name. I actually found out some of the stuff I was trying to do won't work on a local computer group. You have to do it through a domain, which shouldn't be a problem for anybody here who's going to deploy stuff, because presumably you're all working with domains, if I had to guess. So after the metadata, we define a session type. So here we're using restricted remote server, but there's also empty and default. Default is what you're used to seeing. Empty, I have no idea what that does. I didn't look hard enough into the docs because I knew all of the ones that I was going to work on were going to be restricted remote server today. So the next thing that they set up is transcript, and we'll talk a little bit more about this kind of as we go. But with JEA, you can define everything that somebody does in a JEA endpoint is logged in a transcript file and dropped into a folder somewhere. And you can go ahead and set up forwarders for your logs the same way that you would with any other logs that generate on your system, et cetera. But essentially, everything you do and the results of everything you do are written to this transcript file. So they give you a little bit better insight than you get by default with regular PowerShell, unless you've turned on system-wide transcripting, which you should do, please, for the sake of your security team.
Yeah. How do we remove that?
How do you remove?
Move. Because it keeps on putting it in my documents folder. Really
Oh, like the transcript?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be a flag whenever you define it. We can check into that afterwards when we go into the workshop. Just keep that in mind. So that's the transcript directory. The next thing is your virtual account configuration stuff. So one of the other amazing things about JEA is when somebody hits the endpoint, instead of running as themselves, they can run as a virtual account. So this is an account that exists right now and only right now for the duration of this connection. It marks out what endpoint it's for and who hit the endpoint to get it. So if I hit it, it would say that it was the read-only endpoint and it was opened up by Mike Lombardi, and then there's a GUID, right? I don't remember the exact composition, but essentially you've got who opened it, what the endpoint is, and a GUID to identify it. And then that virtual account, by default, is just a user on the machine, and you can add it to one or more groups on that machine, right? So I could say that it's part of the administrators, or if I'm hitting a DC, I could say that it belongs to the domain admins group for whatever role you need it to do, without granting the individual, without putting them in the admins group or the domain admins group or whatever else, right? So the idea here is that you would expose some small limited subset of commands that require admin access and then let them run those instead of making them an admin and letting them log into the machine and run those commands or go through the GUI or whatever. And then the last piece here is the role definitions. So here we can see that I actually have two role definitions, one for marketing and one for IT. So marketing has read-only limited, which is the role that we looked at earlier. The IT department has read-only elevated, which we'll take a look at here in a second once we get to demo-y stuff. Any questions so far? And you can have each, so you identify each group once, but you can have multiple role capabilities here. So this could be, you know, comma, whatever. And if one group has access to multiple roles, there's a way that those compile down where you essentially get the best of those roles. So if I gave IT access to the read-only limited one as well, any commands that weren't in limited but were in elevated, they would get access to those. Any providers that are in elevated but not limited, they would still get access to those. You can't choose to access the lower privilege one, which I think is kind of wonky. I would like to be able to specify, even if I have access to limited and elevated, that I want to hit the limited endpoint. To do this is to define two completely separate PowerShell session configs and have a read-only limited and a read-only elevated. That, I mean, it's not a great story, but it's better than having one endpoint with tons and tons of roles where if you log in, you have access to a bunch of stuff you may not want. Does that make sense? Or does that require a little bit more clarification? Okay, cool. So what time is it? It's demo time. Which is a joke I worked on for 5 minutes on Giphy. So appreciate it if somebody would clap or look happy. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll quickly hide the Google Hangouts recursion there, and we'll move on. So real quick, I'll show you what the limited and elevated. Is this big enough for everybody? I don't know if you guys can see. I'll zoom in for people on the YouTubes at least. So you'll see in elevated, we have more commandlets than we had before. I'm letting you do whatever you want with path. Join, resolve, split, test, etc. Convert from, debug, format. So essentially, all of these are non-destructive command verbs. And what I'm letting this endpoint do is get more information about the server than they could otherwise get with just get commands, right? And to do some brief testing stuff. So if you were to say, I want to get all the processes that are running for Chrome, and then I want to see how much RAM those processes are using together, the limited endpoint can't do that. All it can do is just get the processes. This endpoint actually can. So there's a level of how much do you want to expose and how much do you want to limit for that endpoint. If you want to open up very specific stuff, the best way to do that is to make a module that has exactly the commands that you want them to run and then open those up. And that way you can also specify what parameters are available and do some regex on that. So you can say you can restart service, but only from this list of 4, right? Or only ones that match Java star, right? I haven't done any of that here because I'm keeping it relatively simple as we're going through this. And then you'll see there's another piece here for visible providers. By default, you have none of these. But with the elevated endpoint, you can see files, you can look at registry, although this has a really weird quirk right now that lets you recursively search through registry but not see any keys, which seems not helpful. So you can go through like all the containers, and you can go down HKLM, software system, dive in, go through the control set. You can find your way down the tree, but you can't see any of the keys and their properties. So you're like, I can't see what's in the registry, but I can go to it. So I'm going to file a bug unless I can find somebody to help me out with that sometime soon. The rest of these all seem to work okay. So that's your elevated role. There's limited. One that's a little bit better for us to look at, though, I think, is this patching endpoint. So this patching endpoint is a better example of one that you might actually use in the real world. I think the read-only one's a good idea, but I have to figure out how to make it work better. That's something that I think we would like to be able to offer people, at least, is like, if all you're doing is troubleshooting triage, right? If you're looking at something, maybe the default endpoint that you hit is read-only, right? Try not to do anything that's going to change the server outside of config management pipelines. So this endpoint is relatively simple. It imports a single module, PS Windows Update, and then allows you to use any of the commands in that module, and that's it. That's all you're able to do. So the example here, one of the commands is get Windows Update install, get Whoa. Sorry about that. Hey, they came back up all on their own. That's cute.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I blue screened hard. I wasn't even doing anything, and it was just like, your computer's running into a problem, sad face.
Oh, this is screen hardcore.
All right, fine, that's okay.
I'm just impressed you remembered the WebEx.
I didn't. Well, I mean, Google kept the history, so it's not like I did anything.
There you go. Oh yeah,
super smart here. As we were looking at not the break glass, we're looking at patching. And if I open you to the side, close out, so I can switch back and forth. So here we're showing that the only things you have access to is modules to import and visible functions. If we come back to over here, you can see we're still running with a session type of restricted remote server. We're still dropping our transcripts to a place. So language mode, which is what we were talking about earlier, is no language, restricted language, constrained, or full. I believe this is where you get variables, but no methods and properties. Here's where you get methods and properties, maybe? Can't remember if methods and properties comes back in constrained or full, but we'll double check that at the end of the presentation here. We'll go take a look. You also need to set an execution policy. Again, by default, it's set to restricted, which will mean only Microsoft signed code will run. Because I don't know how many of you have your modules signed, but I'm guessing approximately 0. If I had to guess, based on everybody I've talked to everywhere.
Because they make it super easy.
Right. Well, if buying a code signing cert wasn't super expensive, I feel like most people would do it. It's like $300. All right. I'm interested in your secrets. And then we just have one role definition here, which is that IT has access to the patching role. Something I didn't mention before, your role here must match exactly a role capabilities file found in a module somewhere in your PS module path. Right? It has to exist somewhere, and it'll go looking for it. So make these globally unique. So read-only elevated might not be a good one to use. It might be better off to have like company underscore read-only blah, 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 right? All depends. Like, so we've looked at those ones. If you want an example of one that just wildly cares not at all, then this is a good example. So this one's set to unrestricted. And if we go look at the capabilities, was that here? If we look at capabilities, just all of them. You just run all the commands and all the functions. I don't care. And you've got access to all the providers, whatever. Again, something to note about this is that outside of the Microsoft core set of PowerShell commands, nothing else will run, because you can't get around that you have to explicitly tell it what modules to import. So if you have modules that you're using, then you're going to have to specify them for import. So the best way that I've found, like playing around with this, my advice is to build modules for endpoints, basically. So you were talking about earlier how you wanted to be able to include the ability to sign and send an email, right? Or to send a signed email on completion of a task. You'd either have to include that with everything, or make that a required module underneath the one that you're going to use, right? So, and then for whatever you're doing for like your utilities, I would include everything that I needed there, and then that would be the module with its role capabilities, definition, etc. So these files themselves, these template or the PSSCs, the templates that this makes, do not and should not, in my opinion, remain on the box after they've been used. You want to keep those maybe in source control somewhere. But what you don't want, so if you modify this, you have to unregister and re-register the endpoint. But if you do that, you could just change arbitrarily any of these things. So if I get access to your node, I mean, granted, this is already a lose scenario, right? If I have access to your node and I'm able to walk around changing things inside of restricted directories, I probably have some level of admin access, right? So keeping that in mind, if they get access, they change this. Like, let's say that this did say restricted, and I changed that to unrestricted, and I changed this to full language mode, right? I've negated a lot of the protections that your JEA endpoint's offering you by changing the session configuration. So you want to make sure that you're able to protect that. So something to keep in mind is that you probably want to do this, and you can do this through DSC. You probably want to do this through config management. But when you're initially deploying them out, there's no reason not to just go do some endpoints today without DSC. So I wouldn't let DSC be a showstopper. Go ahead.
I missed the step. You said that the files have to be in the module path. You said not.
Okay, so there's two different file types. Remember, there's PSRC, your PowerShell roles. These ones have to be in the module path. And if you change these between logins, that does change what commandlets are visible. So again, it's a place that you want to have protected. Typically, if you're deploying that to C program files, that folder structure is only editable by admins anyway. So it's not, again, like that's why I was saying it's a risk, but it's not like the end of the world level risk. Same thing with these PSSC files, except that you don't need these after they're deployed. So if you don't need to leave them on disk, you might as well take them back off. You can also deploy JEA through DSC, which I'm not doing in this demo. Mostly because I wanted to go through the process of writing another endpoint with everybody and taking a look at that. But before we do that, let's take a look at what happens when we log in using one of these endpoints. Let me re-add this to here. So if I enter PS session, is everybody familiar with the ability in PowerShell 5 and higher to connect over VMs? So if you're on the hypervisor, you can connect straight through without networking. Guys familiar with that? So if you provide an ID, a GUID, or the VM name on the Hyper-V host, you skip over networking and go straight to it. This also works, I think, for Windows containers. I think there's a way to do that too, not positive. Anyway, so S1 is the box we're going to hit, and then credential, I'm going to connect first as S1 administrator, and no special endpoint. So this is administrator. So this is nothing special. This is the same default connections we're used to. All right, perfect. So when I run git command, I get just a crap load of stuff, right? And you'll see I have access to aliases. And if I do get child item, tab completion works. If I do get child item HKLM, we'll do system. So you'll see I can see properties, etc., right? So that's the first thing we can do. And then if I try to enter PS session, nope, not post process. My P key sticks, I apologize. VM name, S1, credential. So Mary L is a member of the IT department, so she's able to have access to all of the IT department's kind of access. So if I want to hit it over configuration name, let's do the read-only config. Should see something quite a bit different here. Why can't I open the configuration read-only? I might have broke that one earlier today during testing, so we'll see if I can get any of them open. Yeah, okay, so this one opened. So now when I run get command, you should see some of the default commands that are available in all of your connections, but only those commands, right? So the only other thing that's available is that the module that we pulled in through the PSRC. So now we should know that it won't work, but I'll do get child item, and we'll do get child item on the C drive. So get child item isn't even recognized as the name of a commandlet function script file, etc. Right? I just flat out, it doesn't exist for the purposes of this. And when I try to do, let's say, I want to do, oh, well, this won't work, but I'll show you. So if I try to change location, push, nope, nothing. So when I do clear host, one thing that you'll notice in a JEA configuration that's kind of annoying, there is no autocomplete in the restricted language section. So you lose that ability, which is a little bit of a pain. But let's do get dash woo install.
Is a tab complete, is that a function or something?
Tab complete is a language feature that you lose through restricted. I think you get it back around constrained language. We can test these things, by the way, and we may.
By the way, Shepard posted the one thing, the constrained document.
Oh.
Constrained language mode is only supported on Windows RT, which is more or less dead.
Okay.
So it's restricted is the one that you want to use.
Yeah, there's one other layer between, I thought.
Full constrained, no language and restricted.
Okay, yeah, so restricted is the step up from no.
No.
Which is what we're in mostly, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So as you can see, it's actually letting me run these things. I'm not an admin on the box, but it's letting me run and install these because this is running as a virtual account with admin access to the box to install patches. Well, we'll do that. Well, that won't work because who am I is and I don't have access to the environment variables or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to know who you are, but we can check the transcript, and in fact,
and you don't even know what path you're at.
Yeah, here let's do this real quick. Let's come back over to here. We'll open up PS session, VM name, S1, credential, so we'll come in here. Really? Yeah. Are we going to freeze again? What's happening? All right, cool. And then we go to CD transcripts. We'll see that we have one folder created for the patching. So we'll CD into patching. We should have, yep, one open one. So let's do cat, and that's the one that ends in 1902. It's be very long.
So I got a question for you in the transcripts. They
Sure.
Everything.
Absolutely all the things, yeah, and lots of data.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily obfuscate other things. Like,
Yeah, like passwords and stuff.
Yeah.
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 Cool. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. So
That's one reason that, believe it or not, turning off the ability to to do PowerShell transcripting,
Mhm.
had to be put into our GPOs.
Yeah.
Really?
I'm sure that's not the right answer, but I don't know what the right answer is, so I'm not going to suggest one until I can find somebody who knows more. Matt Graber is probably a good resource on this. I'm sure other people knew.
Yeah. And this was like, it's actually not as the CIS.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Same thing. So here, this tells you all the information about the session that you started up, who I'm running as. So in this case, you'll see running as virtual account, the unique ID, the domain, and that it's me. And I opened it as Mary L. when I opened it, etc. So it says I ran get command, and then this is all the information that came back. It's just so much crap. I don't think it's finished yet. So here's all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes after I hit. Let's see if we can find it. There we go. Everything that happened after this is all the stuff for get woo install. Or maybe not, maybe it hasn't gotten that far. This is all the select object stuff, so it looks like it hasn't finished writing at that time that we catted it for that. So let's try it again. I'm sorry. Get content. Look, I have a Mac as my daily driver now.
No, but at the end of it, dash tail 20 dash. Wait.
Can we tail and get content? Are you teaching me things now?
20 dash wait. Enter. Okay.
Huh.
Okay. Have fun.
Huh.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It's not as great as just having a tail command, but there is get content dash tail 20 dash wait, and it will now wait here until you're done.
Well, that's magic.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you, Ken.
You're welcome.
You're good people. But I want to see the whole file, Ken. I don't know why you're lying to me.
Then take out the tail 20. And then it will go the whole thing.
I know that.
But, well, you can just do the tail.
I don't. Shh. Ken, I didn't ask.
Now you don't appreciate it.
All right,
That
so
period is now over.
yep. So that's kind of the short intro to what do, how do JEA. Are there any lingering questions about how you build an endpoint? And then are we ready to head into building our own endpoint live? All right, let's do it. So we want to build our own endpoint. Jeez. So I'll go ahead
It's
and
amazing how similar it looks like that definition from a
oh, that's why nothing's gonna work. Exit. Clear. Yeah, role capability file. I was trying to remember what this was called. Source. So what do we want? What do we want to accomplish with our new role? What's the thing we want this role to do on our theoretical server?
Software inventory?
To look through stuff through WMI, or
Or you think it's
I don't have an answer for what's best, because what's best is to use chocolatey, but
yes, it is.
I'm
We
sorry,
could- no,
I'm trying
no,
to strengthen
no.
my security group and getting Windows PowerShell 5.1 on everything.
that's a great idea. 6 drops in like a month.
Might as well wait a month and just get 6.
I did play that game at many previous jobs, though. It was
But
just
when
like
you're
skipping
jumping
forward.
from
Yeah.
2
Yes. Do anything to get off 2. If it helps you, it's officially deprecated.
Well, because right now, I'm trying to write a software inventory script for local, to be run on a local machine, and 90% of my stuff that's still in Windows 7 installed.
Yep.
And I'm like, I can't use export JSON?
Oh, but you can though. It's not that command. You have to do it through .NET.
Yeah, I tried that. The problem with it, so I was like, fine, we'll just go back to export CLI.
Oh.
All right, so we've got a new role capability file. Would help if I didn't look there. Instead, look here. All right, so I've got a new one, and the author of this one we'll call STLPsug. The description. Oh my goodness. All right, so does anybody know what we need access to be able to do this? Because if not, I'm about to hit the Google.
For getting software inventory.
Yep.
I'm calling it.
Other than WMI. Registries. The one thing that I can't do right now is I can't make that work. I can't get it to show keys in JEA. Yeah, so while we look that up, I will go ahead and I'll go into the break glass so you can see that it doesn't work at all. Password. Yeah, look at that. So, so get command works, right? We got all these. You'll notice again, though, it's just Microsoft's core stuff.
Alright. And override.
Yep, because I have those too. So, get child item, HKLM, software. Well, there's no properties. So that's probably fine, right? Like, there's probably there's no keys under any of these. I'm sure. Oh, that doesn't work either. Here, we'll do which one do you want to get item property for? ACPI? App ID? Because as a side note, LSA?
Yeah, I don't know what keys, not bad.
So LSA, why do you show up here but not? If I do get item property, you work. But if I do get item, oh, well, if I didn't delete HKLM. So you can find it, I guess. These all look like keys, but only if you do get dash item property. Woo! Perfect. Good. Good. So we sort of found a way to get stuff out of registry, I guess, kind of. I'm assuming that these are all actual keys underneath LSA. Yep. Unless these are, I was gonna say these don't look like properties of.
Wait. No, that's.
No? Because I can also.
Oh, those, the PS stuff is amended, okay.
Yeah,
So,
because I can also do get child item, and I can look at one of these. Let's do access providers. We'll do some MARTA extension, I guess, is the key there.
oh, good. Windows updates. Wow, look at this.
Okay, so we could maybe find it through registry, but it seems like it would be a wee complicated, a wee bit complicated. But we could write a function to do it and just do that instead. So let's try that. So let's figure it out locally first, and then we'll worry about making it run remotely. So we'll come in here, and we'll make a new function, get software inventory. All right, so I don't actually know that's going to be a really good way to look for software.
No, I have to do the uninstall line. That's how I put it.
Yeah, you go with the install. Yeah, you have to look at all the uninstall list of lists.
Where does that live again? In path? It's Microsoft, Windows, current version, uninstall? Yeah.
Why don't you ask us if you can figure it out?
Software Microsoft Windows current version uninstall. That's a pretty.
I think you also need to look in the SysWow 64 one, right? So let's do this. Let's do.
And you're gonna have to do it for each one. You're gonna have to get the link.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
No, my box is sitting there on this site.
And then it was software. Okay, so we've got our paths for each path and paths. Also, if there's something I'm doing that makes absolutely no sense to you, speak up and we'll go through that as well. So, say again? Oh, yeah, it's a lot better. Here, let me change. Is this more readable? Or here, I'll make all the purists happy. Right? Doesn't get better than ISE. I was doing something and now I've forgotten what I was doing. Oh, right. Get child item path with a P, not an underscore. Path for each object process. Get item property. Actually, we can do it this way. we want,
So is $underscore shortcut for this item?
yes. Yep. So let's see what happens when we do. Yeah, I'm gonna take a look at what we actually get if we don't do anything. So we might be able to select on a couple of properties and return those. So we'll just do this one. That didn't work at all. Because it is null. Why is it null? It's on get item property. Yeah, it should come from the output from here. Let's exploratory code. Get member. Property. Yeah, that's what we want. PS path. Thank you. Not full name. There we go. So we get back all of them. And so then we'll PS select object P as in property. Good Lord, my P key would work. So what are the properties we actually want to capture? We want
display name, display version.
Yep. So we definitely want display name, display version. Do we also want the install location or install source if we have it? Probably not. So we just want the display name, display version. All right, we can do that for now.
Our demo.
Display name, display version. And look at that, we can see all the stuff that I've got installed twice because 3 times, that's why. Huh. That's great. What the hell happened here? There we go. That's better. All right, so we can see just that stuff. That should be good enough. Everybody's happy with it. So let's go ahead, save this. And then over to software inventory. The only visible function we need this is barbarian kb.jea get software inventory. So you always want to fully qualify. Otherwise, I could just add a, you don't want it to be ambiguous. So we've got that, and then there should be modules to import. Don't care about any of this. Although note here, while we're looking at the auto template that it's spun up, you can specify this the same way you can in a require statement, where you could specify the GUID, the module version, etc. So that actually adds a degree of safety too. So if I just specify module, you can go change the module files and it will still load it. If you specify it down to GUID and module version, then it'll fail to load that if it doesn't match up with what's here, or if that's not on the machine. Like for the PowerShell module that you're importing. So if I updated it, it is, right? So again, we're assuming that they don't have access to that. But I can add anything to your PS module path. I could just add a new version of your module. Otherwise, as long as it shares a name, it'll still get loaded. Modules to import is barbarian kb.jea. All right. So I think that should be all we need. Now we shouldn't need to do any of these other bits and bobs because it's all handled within the function, right? The only thing that we want to do is run this one single command as a really, really limited endpoint. So open this back up and let's create a new. Yeah.
Oh, you have, let's say, anyone goes out, it's all your computers, get the whole inventory, which is basically allowing just access to this.
I'm just going to copy this over.
Playing around in directory, be able to create a service account, but doesn't have the right to log on. Basically, so that because people were using service accounts that were domain accounts, and they knew the password, and they were logging into the one. Okay. So we had to disable the service accounts from being able to log in. Yeah. Like
Then there's the comes along, I have a service that all my software in, and it turned on logging on my box. It's flooded. You do much? Yeah, I'm reconciling all 20,000 different settings. You want to watch all that? Go run it in.
So the rest of this piece here is a little bit of behind the scenes magic, so I apologize for that. Yeah.
Oh, I hate when I do this. There's a one. This monitor, and now that I only use one monitor, the application still says, yeah, but I started up over here. One more word. So it's literally open, it's just open over here.
I'll go home and
It's under dashboard.
Okay, so I've created you now.
I'll go back to work. So the one as paid,
Oh, yeah. Okay, someone put the plug in there. Oh, I find adapters available. Oh, God.
That was a great update for you.
Hey, If it makes you feel better, I also blue screened today because of an update. So you know,
Same update probably.
Oh, was it the Fall Creators update?
I think that's what I'm getting.
See, no, you crashed because you didn't update. I crashed because I did update.
Oh, no.
It's a subtle
Right
distinction.
now,
He crashed
Tanium is
during
update.
Mm.
Tanium is updating my PC, I think, right now.
That's not great.
Considering it just updated my network driver, I don't think it's gonna come back.
All right, so now let's see if we can enter under the software inventory stuff here.
Okay. Oh, no.
Will you ask me for my credentials, maybe? Do you not feel comfortable asking me for my credentials?
You just have to know.
Yes.
This is like the kids' social network. They're just trying to drag me out.
Slack. Just Slack. It's the standard. Everything works with it. Teams is catching up, but not fast enough.
Oh, I don't get that.
Well, yeah, because Microsoft is
Slack
throwing
isn't
all of their money at it.
Slack going to Office 365.
No, but why do you want things that go into Office 365?
Or when you're trying to go to a single platform, they don't want to bring in open source software like Slack.
Slack's not open source; it's closed source.
Well, okay, third party is, but they don't want to bring in something like Slack.
And
They
Teams
want
is free once you've already.
If you have O365, yes. Yes, and that is its #1 selling point.
So-
Because feature for feature, it's still trash comparatively. Yeah, through Skype. Slack also has VoIP meetings though, so that's not a VoIP and video. So it's not a comparison. Anyway, I'm getting real off topic here. I apologize.
So it's not a box. It's a box.
Company, Mary L. Configuration name.
Just Teams, it's,
What's on Flow? Plan Flow?
they've written connectors on any channel.
Software inventory.
Huge.
There we
I
go.
would really like to be able to open my pharmacy, read it left off, and have it reach around and slap my web up so they call it.
It should go through JEA. That's right.
Sorry, wrong platform. That one's on the right hand.
No, not wrong platform. Red Hat can run PowerShell 6 and thus has JEA.
Sure.
I'm not saying you should.
Once they make that, they'll
Mind
need
you.
to run PowerShell.
Yeah, that's exactly what they
I've been
want.
playing with PowerShell 6 and I'm trying to figure out what I should do to stay with once you're done with the one. I have insane ideas about this stupid product plan online.
Well, that's interesting. It did not import our
Module.
module. You know why it didn't?
You can't copy the module.
Oh no, I did.
Oh,
So it didn't because I'm stupid, which is often
I'm
the
stupid.
case.
You're just making that big one.
Wah, wah, wah. So we've got these things. You know what I probably should do? Should probably verify that this command even works locally. Get soft. You know what it is? Does anybody have any guesses as to what it is? Looking here.
Yeah, it's
So
your
it's new-
PSP1 file that you didn't define the new function.
Correct, because you'll notice here I export all the functions, but I didn't do it here. So remember, kids, you've got to be smarter than the tools you're using.
Don't use PSP1.
Ken had exactly the wrong advice, which is what you can trust him for.
The only problem with PSD ones is, even if you load the PSM one, you completely have bypassed the PSD one. If you do import module on PSM one,
Yep.
the PSD one is then no good.
Right, correct.
So someone who's going to import your module needs to know what the hell they're doing.
Very few people will go look at the path though. If they're installing it, if it's been installed as a package or you've deployed it, they'll just do ipmo name, right? 99.9% of the time. Ken, do you beat your employees enough?
No. Because we
The
don't
correct
deploy
answer is
the-
you
we
don't-
deploy PowerShell modules into the actual directory, so they can be loaded easily like that. 'Cause,
Where do you put them?
you know,
And why don't you just update the PS module path then?
Okay, what better than mine?
What do you think I need Nikki to go do? I'm too busy to do the mundane stuff. Honestly, the only place we use modules is in Snap. So.
All right.
Really doesn't want-
Let's try this one more again. I'm surprised it actually worked. So fun story, I found out if you have it import a module that doesn't exist, it throws a fit and dies. It will not create that endpoint. Just flat out won't do it. So let's do get command. Haha, now you can see we have get software inventory, get software inventory. Let's see if we actually turn anything up. Oh my God, it does not like us. The argument display name does not belong to the set. Module name, namespace, output type, count.
Holy hell.
So it's trying to run a function, immediately you have rights to run the function, the command's inside it, but you don't have rights to run it, so you can't run it.
I don't know. That's error 0, format list, force. Womp womp womp. I can't do the error check is the problem here. So let's exit. Then let's do this.
Really crippled.
Session equals
How many of us would just have done $S?
well, not all of us are presenting to the internet, so import. Shut up. I know he's the only person watching, but I like to pretend.
Bye, Mike.
It's not fixed. That's frustrating. Okay. So there's a bug in PowerShell 5.1 where import PS session doesn't work. That's fixed in the fall update. So yeah, it doesn't work.
They literally,
It's fixed in the fall creators update.
what, they broke it?
I guess.
It
It was like broken. It's broken in July. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah. So I talked about that today. So this is why I updated my lab earlier and it didn't work. So that's encouraging. That's what I wanted to see. I can't do that to try to troubleshoot. So that makes this interesting. So let's just hippity hop flip flop over.
You know, on the local line.
Yeah, let's just do this as admin. S1 administrator. We'll just come in as our break glass equivalent endpoint. Not that I ever advocate you logging in as the administrator to a server, like
That's a lot.
built-in admin. Still shouldn't do it. This is still not great. If I do get software inventory, now that is an interesting result. So get child item, HKLM, software, Microsoft, Windows, current version. Ah, you know what? I don't think we don't have anything. There's nothing installed.
How could there be nothing installed?
Because I haven't installed anything. Hold on,
Are you
let's.
serious?
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Well,
install Chocolatey.
that's exactly where I'm going. Chocolatey.org/install. You've noticed I've been on this page a lot. Wah, wah.
Yeah, I noticed you added that new little handy bit to the phone.
Was it bypass?
Yeah.
It's not really needed.
So, as the method of deployment, how do you guys think of it?
IEX?
No,
Invoke expression is
not in prod.
why?
IEX should not be used in your production machines.
Why?
We've been over this. It's arbitrary execution of whatever you want off the internet.
Uh-huh. But if you have downloaded Chocolatey to a local source,
Right, that's different, but then you don't need to do IEX either.
So,
why? If I want to be able to bypass execution policy to be able to install it, that's one of the.
No,
If you've got it locally, you control your own Chocolatey install end to end, right? Just have it on the box.
I mean if I have a, so what I have a PowerShell script sitting in GitHub that is my own, and I have a repo, a new Git repo where Chocolatey lives. So I've downloaded his Chocolatey, Pro Git, Artifact, whatever. In his script, there is a way to tell it, this is your source, not online, right? So I do that. Like if you actually look at that install script.
Right, yeah, no, it has environment variables that you can use. I mean, why not, like if you're doing it prod level deployment, maybe just don't use the internet at all. Like a wholly offline
I
install.
don't, but I still use IEX.
also, the reason I asked is I had this
We'll do
same
overall.
idea where I kind of want to get that server. I was going to start taking my production scripts, shove it over into GitHub, and then create a small wrapper that sits on my server. This is, we'll get the latest version out.
To me, that's not a problem, but you don't have to use IEX. You could use, a bunch of different things.
The other problem with IEX is that you're not doing a hash check before you execute. Now, if you grab it, check the hash to verify that it's what you want, and then run, I'm fine with it. But unless you're talking about an endpoint you fully control and you trust entirely, and you want to run right, like so your internal GitLab, right?
Yeah,
GitLab
that's what he's
CE,
saying.
right? That's okay, but it's always contextual, right? In general, IEX against a web client download.
And technically, that's just shorthand. What you
Right.
put in the middle of that, you can just, if you're gonna go.
You can add the Git file hash to that.
Well, yeah, just take away the IEX, still use the web client to download it, but then you're just gonna save it, go, right?
I wasn't, the idea was to keep the script on the wall.
I feel like Google Chrome's the wrong thing to install on server 4, but
Wait, what?
This is fine.
You're running server core?
yeah.
How are you even gonna execute Chrome?
What up, homie? I don't care.
It's gonna be like Gopher.
I just needed to show up in the installed software.
I'm surprised you even installed.
I am too. Well, it downloaded. It hasn't installed yet. It might still crash.
Chocolatey is going to force it.
Copy files.
So you just want to execute your oath where you want to have like credentials and stuff like that.
Whole idea was to have
Do
two, one where I have my.
you have any questions so far about JEA itself?
And then another one where I have. I'll spring a long way behind. And then.
You're really not as far behind as you think. No, I mean, what, 4 years ago I started learning? And 4 years is a pretty long time, but I also, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, like tonight, like JEA has been around for 18 months, right? And it's been, quote, in use, end quote, by like 4 organizations on the planet since then, right? There's like one dude who did it for Formula One, right? Like one race car group has got JEA and he presents on it all the time. And very, very few people have implemented it. And some of the patterns that we talk about here are ones, Hey, look, there we go. We got something, finally. So now maybe next time when we switch over, it'll actually,
So you install chocolate here, right?
yeah. But chocolate doesn't show up in there because it's,
But it's showing the install.
yeah, it's not an MSI. It's a shimmed one. It's just an executable on the path.
It's actually an option. But it's
You're an option. Dollar session. I apologize for being 12, everybody. It's software inventory.
so basically works it out.
Did we get nothing back at all? That's very interesting.
Executable to and actually load that.
Beep, beep, beep,
I
beep.
know. So.
You don't have to load the actual discount provider, do you? It's not an option.
It shouldn't need it.
That's just-
Execute. Ah, that might be where we're, no, because it, yeah, it shouldn't have run the function at all with the execution policy being broke. But we can test that.
Wait, will it let you do the?
Help if I would exit first. Copy. All right, so for those playing along at home, our module command is not working, and we're trying to figure out why. And it might be that we need to explicitly add the registry provider, though I wouldn't expect that. Because it's not throwing a fit that it couldn't look in the registry, it's throwing a fit that what we're calling on select object doesn't work.
Well, it's stating that it's got a completely different list of properties.
Right. Then if we come, so if we run get software inventory here, it works. So I wonder if it's actually a problem. Real sick of this default password. Okay.
Namespace out. Wait, module name. Validate set attribute.
I'm wondering if it gives me a terrible version of select object limited by what's available in the original endpoint. But first we're gonna fall back on all the Googles.
Did you mean sure?
Whatever you say, bud. Oh, all this looks like gobbledygook. That's fine. So let's go back to our role definition here. Visible functions. And we'll do visible commandlets is equal to go for it.
I just wanted to see your error
Oh,
when you're fine.
yeah, here, let me. Again, I have to exit before I can also over here. Whoa. This would have been so much more impressive if it had worked the first time.
But that's not how the world works.
Nope. And part of the point of these things is to do a little bit of workshopping like this and kind of let you guys see, like, the guy who's, quote, so far ahead of you still can't get a single function to run
You
remotely.
get walls of red text too.
All the time. I think half of my life is debugging now. Especially now that I'm a, quote, software engineer, end quote. Just gonna look at a truncated version of this in the Googles.
Ooh.
Aha! November 29th, 2016, Gia?
I just found that.
Das Googles.
That's Bing.
Ew.
I know. Everybody hates what you think.
They added
They
an
just
alias.
added all that crap. Oh my god. Seriously? Really?
That's fine.
There's a way to overlap approximately create that. Eliminating selected object will make a lot of use cases unusable. That one works, but I think
It's because it won't work with the restricted remote server type. Well, we'll copy and paste cargo culting because that's the internet. Again, I don't suggest that you.
I told you I was updating. Look. That's the great version.
So this is a good time to bring up another thing that you can do with JEA. So interestingly enough, with JEA, you can actually, I think aliases take precedence over functions, right? You alias on top. There's an order of precedence. We'll try it. But anyway, so interestingly, you can define aliases and functions here and then pass those through. So actually, let's do that.
It's called like select O that way, or you literally.
I'm hoping that this will actually override the existing select object and make it work.
Ooh, good there.
It's the fully working one, so I'm hoping. I don't remember if that's the actual order. Mike Shepard probably knows, but he won't be able to tell us for like another 20 seconds.
And he won't be able to post it into the chat. He'll have to put it into the meetup. The URL. Oh, wait. Did he respond?
Not yet. Woo! Stop it, PowerShell. Don't do that. No.
It's broken.
It are not like me. He's not answering. Maybe he stopped watching. He might not care. He might have given up on me. Are you reading Reddit while I'm presenting?
No, it's what's his name? J. Cole updated something. I was just seeing what it was.
Huh. Back
No,
to
I
here.
follow the PowerShell guy. I follow you. I follow.
You know what? Let's try this. This is a terrible, stupid way to do things.
Wait, doesn't he have visible aliases? You have to do.
Hold on.
Oh, geez.
We're going to do it the dumb way. We don't care. I don't care what software inventory you have. Yeah, this is trash design. I don't. This is not, for the record, what I advocate you do. Yeah, basically. And we're doing, instead of select object, select
So what I
my
don't ever
object.
listen to my.
Correct. Continuously correct, actually. Yeah. Yep, we're gonna see if we can make this work. Cause it to use select dash my object instead. Although this is a weird problem for it to have, because 99% of the time somebody's gonna use select object, they're gonna want property. Like they're gonna want to pick a particular property. So it seems like a weird line in the sand to have drawn. It did not. Well, it's not in that list. It's not in that error list we were getting. You only have access to whatever those 3 or 4 properties it had specifically called out were. Why did you pick the most complicated, hard thing that should have been easy? We wrote the code so fast to do it. And then I'm too dumb to make it work, apparently.
I'm just hoping this is not going to play out the same way next week. Play next and actually do stuff tomorrow. Well, we haven't gotten any versions of the software.
So it just straight up didn't load. So I'm just gonna, we don't need this line either. We don't need this stupid module either. I don't care about none of this. So we'll try one more time, and then I will probably give up and let everybody go home, because I feel like I'm keeping you all here to watch me fruitlessly battle. Mike doesn't know, that's good. Makes me feel better. And he has access to Google. Bop, bop, bop. Cannot create or open it. Yep, so it doesn't like what we're doing here.
Sorry.
I'm wondering if that's because it didn't like here. So we will try again.
Oh, sorry.
Right. And then here, make that select my object. As far as I can tell, this is all correct.
So the area is defined in the session.
I'm guessing that it wouldn't work outside of this. That if I called the module, if I called the task, the function right now in the non-session defined one right here, I bet it won't work. Why would you work? I give up. I don't know how the internet works.
Isn't it already imported?
You are right. You are 100% right.
Sitting in memory right now, so you have to.
Now it'll break. Now it doesn't know what select my object is.
Cool.
So that's what we wanted.
I always fall for that one. But oh, that's right.
And so
So I usually mine is those import force over the top.
hey, we're in this time. And now
What?
get software inventory Hey, now it works. We made, look at that.
Select object.
A module that's broken on its own.
Yep.
Or works in the context of a.
That might actually be perfect. Yeah, that's not good. That's a pretty shitty solution. I'm gonna have to submit something to PowerShell. Actually, let's do that.
It works.
Meow. Yeah, it's functional. I don't know that that's.
This would be good, because I don't have it.
Yeah, let's do that real quick. That's something that some people might want to occasionally do. PowerShell. Actually, I guess it should be a JEA complaint more than anything.
In the space of about 40 minutes, we put together a discovery plan that's been over the commissions. If we do what we want.
Go on, spit back what's installed on the machine.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
And you can assign it to any system. And
You could give access to your, so a lot of the times, in my experience, it's the security team that goes, do you know what's installed in the system? They don't have to ask you that question. They could just have access to the software inventory endpoint and go get it.
So with that, and maybe I missed it, I'm giving Mary L.
Yep.
access to that endpoint.
No, we gave that access to that endpoint to the IT OU, to the IT group. She is a member of the IT group, so you could give it to any group. So you could say
Okay.
like security group or auditors or whoever, and give it to that. You can also do individual people, but typically you're going to want to do it by group membership. Which
Do you
one?
mind that
That line?
doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's right here. We said everybody in the group company IT has access to the software inventory role.
Okay.
So I could add,
So it's not so that it's not a full, will that accept, distinguished name? Will it accept the end format?
I don't know.
RAD is, yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, you could set it to any group that you wanted here. So if we wanted marketing to be able to take a look and see what was
So
installed,
it's just
we could
doing
do
that
that too.
up against the unified group.
Yep.
And is that?
And you can do local groups as well. So I could do S1 / some biggles.
There's a problem I want your advice on, but not right this second.
Okay. So let's doing a live presentation with the.
Now you log in this again.
We still have any of those errors?
Yeah.
I just gotta scroll back miles, I'm sure. Nope, doesn't scroll back far enough.
You have another remote kit.
This one won't work. I'd have to break it again. I'll just steal that guy's error. That's fine. That's ethical, right?
Oh, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we found it.
Yeah. It's really deep. Love it. Doesn't even work out.
Yeah.
I hate it. Oh, my. put our code in there.
Yeah.
Microsoft's ability to patch it. I just patched it on the first one with the Windows 7 last time. And before that, I just rolled over the last time. Oh, you pull 100 or 11. That's what one's needed.
Do you want to know the full phone part? We're using a different product than this is the one that. And brand new servers, when they get built, they get put into a question we can ask a team that says, find me all servers that have an install date that's less than or equal to 0 in today. Days since installed, 0.
Okay.
All that just enough for the first day. We filled the drive 60 days. Patches. Because it's base ISO win image of 2012 R2 to now. We're like, I think something went wrong because it's never happened before, but it happened to like 8 servers. And I'm like, Damien, you have a problem. They're like, yeah, you might want to social media patches. I go, you still have a problem because you filled up the hard drive so much that your own product couldn't patch. Like, yeah, but that's how Windows up, like a WhatsApp server would do the same thing if you applied that many patches. I'm like, it's not a good behavior if you want to replicate.
So
Better.
real quick, let me close out a PR that I need to do here. Go to merge requests, new merge request. So source branch, compare.
At first I read get pitch from X. But
Oh man, that's not what I want to do. I want to do a master. I derped it up. Do I only have one branch because I screwed this up entirely? I should have master. Git push.
we
Oh, you know what it is? I never pushed master up.
wow.
Oh my goodness.
So you now have both is the same thing?
No.
Oh, you switched.
Nope, I want that to go the other way. So from git pitch into master.
And get hub is the inverse of that.
Yeah.
You put your destination first and your sort second. Well, never makes sense.
Okay, squash commits. Add presentation. Assign to me. This way, add pitch me, and YAML, and the logo. Great. Submit merge request. Squish and merge.
PowerShell.
Yeah.
Forward, that saves the box. And then run it.
Cool.
PowerShell forward, not Windows, but Windows PowerShell forward. UPS session accepts host name and
So for those of you who aren't familiar with Git, I stashed our changes real quick, switched back updated everything, and now I'm actually going to commit the changes that we made here tonight. Add new endpoint.
So it's actually working at PowerShell now?
I mean, that's always worked pretty well for me. What's up?
Every time I fit.
Oh, yeah, I'm adding a more detailed one. Always do a blank line in between.
Yeah. Look at you big old long lines. Something in the plans.
Like the last time I was trying to
Yeah, it'll still try to do Vim, but you can replace the default editor that it pops up. You can have it pop up in VS Code or ISC or whatever you want, or you can have it pop up in Vim and it should still work. Oh, you're on PowerShell 2? Console
Well,
host is different.
No, this was on PowerShell.
If you're on 5 or newer, your console host should be able to handle it. I don't know about 4 and previous.
It may have been the last time I tried it was 4.
Yeah, because there's a lot of... Mike Shepard has been listening to me. I appreciate you, Mike Shepard. You're an angel. So we've got our changes. Our changes are made. And let's come back up. We'll do merge requests. And then we'll do create merge request. Write live. And I will assign it to me. Target branch is not get pitch. You know what it is? It's the first one I pushed, so it's the one that it considers the default protected, so I'll have to go into settings and change that here in a sec. So remove source branch and squash commits when the merge request is accepted. Not that we have any extras, but whatever. And we'll submit our merge request.
Do you like squashing commits?
Depends. It really does.
Okay.
I don't do it for work because we make all of our commits in logical units. But it really depends. I like having, I don't like merge commits, I guess is where I'm going. So like, totally off topic. We'll come back to that later, you and I. But real quick, before I forget, because I absolutely will, you go to settings, and then repository. Yep. GitLab's pretty nifty. Protected branches.
Yep.
Where is my default? Is there push, pull, protected branches? Usually it's master.
All right.
No. Where is it? General? You're somewhere in here. Merge commit. I hate merge commits. Ugh. I don't know why. They just drive me absolutely crazy. Where? For the love of God. You know what? It's fine. I'm not going to find it right now. Default branch. There you are.
Literally, as you were scrolling, like,
See, as you give up, so too do you solve your problems. All right, cool. So, long story short, we solved a whole bunch of things. Are there any kind of lingering questions about JEA or how you might use it or why you might use it? It's still pretty rough, in my opinion. Like, there's still quite a bit of stuff that they need to go through to kind of add explainers for and do some training on. But my opinion, after playing around with it, is that some JEA endpoint should be the default that people are hitting over. And that we should add as few people to actual admin groups on boxes as we can manage, right? And start trying to think about how we limit that blast radius. I like the idea of the read-only endpoint that I was trying to work with. Just need to figure out a way to tweak that and make that something that people could adopt more readily. It'd be great to see it'd be great to see an inbox read-only endpoint added to PowerShell. right? One of the frustrations I've always had with PowerShell coming from a Linux background is the lack of sudo. Like I just want to be admin for the lifespan of this single command, and then I want to go back to not being admin. Right? I don't want to hit a session and be admin all time, doing all the things as admin.
But being able to have granular control of what you have that admin right to do.
Right. Yeah. So there's still some rough edges to go work out, but overall, I think it's a software area that they need to continue to invest heavily in, and that we should start investing in our organizations. I could do a follow-up to this sometime where we talk about deploying it through DSC if that's something that people are interested in. But I think so few people have adopted DSC right now that it's probably better if we talk about how to do it without DSC. There's a couple of commands around it, so I mean you can discover those on your own. If you just look up like the JEA overview, which I used initially. So docs.microsoft and PowerShell JEA overview. If you go to here, I mean, this is a decent enough walkthrough on how to do it. Kind of get you started. And as always, I'm available. If we flip back over here, no, here, flip over here. I'm always available on Twitter, GitLab, GitHub, and LinkedIn. If you guys have any questions, you just reach out to me. Like permanently available to help you, pretty much. I don't really have. Did he? Yeah, Monroe probably covered this a lot better than I did, if I had to guess.
Last year.
Yeah, I saw the Formula One at here, and it was pretty decent. But I feel like people are still not adopting JEA, which probably means that it's still kind of a cliff for people to climb. I also looked. This is really interesting. So real quick, before I close this whole thing out and we switch over to talking and not mic presenting mode. So if you go to the PowerShell gallery, you can filter on a whole bunch of stuff, right? One of the things that you can filter on is role capability. You ready for this? This is pretty exciting. There's not a single module publishing role capabilities in JEA right now. Not one. Nothing anywhere in the whole thing. Yeah. There's nothing on the PowerShell gallery that includes one of those role capability files we talked about.
Really?
Not one. That tells me the adoption is probably pretty low, and we haven't found good, relatively available ways for people to build those roles out, right? Because it's not the PSSC, which the session config, the endpoint config will vary between every single organization that adopts it. But a read-only role should be something that we could publish and get out there that other people could adopt. And then you just say whoever gets that role, right? Nothing. There's not one. Which I thought was kind of weird and interesting. So on that sort of macabre note, I will end the presentation. Thank you guys for coming in. And
Mike Shepard.
Thanks, Mike Shepard. You're our hero, as usual. So I'm going to try to close out of this without catching the whole thing on fire.